It's certainly a symbolic move because it shows that Trump is prepared to do something to support Ukraine and to hurt Russia.
Let's talk first of all about Ukrainian weapons. The US will join the UK and allies in lifting all range restrictions on weapons in Ukraine, according to the German Chancellor, not anyone in America. This has come from Friedrich Merz, who said that Ukraine will be able to defend itself with long-range fire, but Washington is yet to confirm they've decided to do this. In the meantime, President Trump has turned on Vladimir Putin as tensions grow between the two leaders over Ukraine.
I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all. I don't like what Putin is doing, not even a little bit. He's killing people, and something happened to this guy, and I don't like it.
David Charter, a very impassioned Donald Trump there. I don't want to be an amateur psychoanalyst, but it does seem to me that Donald Trump has an almost squeamish reaction to death. He really doesn't like it. He really doesn't like killing. He doesn't like war, and he does want to stop it. But of course, how is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you almost think, who's going to tell Donald, right? Because it has been clear and rather exasperating to the Western allies, apart from America, that Putin is not that trustworthy when it comes to negotiating a ceasefire. And President Zelensky of Ukraine has said he will comply with an unconditional 30-day ceasefire. He's been saying that since March, since President Trump and Vice President Vance shouted at him in the Oval Office a lot. You're bang on that Trump doesn't like the killing. He has quite often talked about his presidency being he wants to be the peacemaker for the world, and of course he did launch, to his credit, he did launch peace processes in various places, notably Ukraine and Gaza, but they're not going according to plan, neither of them. And the two main reasons for that are the leaders of the protagonist or antagonist countries, of course. So he's having trouble with President Putin. He's having trouble with Prime Minister Netanyahu going along with what he wants, which is to stop the killing, which is a fantastically laudable aim. But it's, as I say, it's not proven as easy as Trump thought it was going to be. He's tried the first main method that he uses, which is rhetorical pressure. So Trump's unusual and intemperate and often shocking language does quite often bring results. You only have to ask NATO members, right? So who were told by Trump he's going to walk away from NATO, and they found billions and billions of extra dollars to spend on defense. So it can work. But it seems that Putin and Netanyahu are immune to rhetorical pressure, and especially with Putin, Trump has shied away from direct, I won't say criticism, because he has a couple of other times he's shown his frustration, his growing frustration with Putin, I think. Notably at Easter, when, again, there were attacks, weren't there, on, I think it was Easter Sunday or over the Easter weekend, that were quite shocking on a market in Ukraine. So this is not the first time, but it is the most outspoken that Trump has ever sounded about Putin. As I say, the Western allies have taken this opportunity, and it's Friedrich Merz of Germany who's taken the opportunity to come out and saying, right, that's it. All of there's no more restrictions on long-term weapons firing. And of course, it's quite intriguing for I would say Kremlin watchers, but I mean watchers of the situation between Trump and Putin, is that it falls to the German chancellor to say this. And we've asked the White House, lots of people have been asking the White House for a comment, and they have been conspicuous by their silence today. Trump still doesn't want to get directly aggressive and antagonistic with Putin, we don't think. He's been holding out the possibility of rewards for Putin, like a one-on-one meeting, and maybe even lifting sanctions. He's always had some rewards ready for Putin to move, but he hasn't moved. And it does seem like now he's getting it that the Russian leader does not want to stop. He wants to carry on taking more of Ukraine, if possible. So we await with trepidation what happens next.
What about this mini escalation, I suppose you could call it? The Chancellor saying that we are going to remove the arbitrary range limits on the use of our weapons that the Ukrainians can fire into Russia. Will that actually have any effect whatsoever?
Well, it's certainly a symbolic move because it shows that Trump is prepared to do something to support Ukraine and to hurt Russia. It won't have far-reaching effects on the ground because we think that we don't know the actual numbers because they're secret, but we think no more than 50 long-range missiles were given by the United States to Russia, and some of those have already been used. President Biden said they could be used in the Kursk area where the Ukrainians took some Russian territory and were trying to defend it. So some of them have been able to be used in that limited area. Now, it's possible to use them wherever, and this is obviously because we've seen these enormous drone attacks. The three largest attacks of the whole the whole war since 2022 have come in the last week, including there's over 300 drones attacking Kiev on Sunday. And we don't know how many of those American long-range missiles it's got left. Again, it's secret how many long-range British and French missiles they've got. It could be somewhere between 100 and 200. We don't know how many of them are left. So perhaps the actual impact on the ground will be limited, but the symbolic impact is possibly greater. And it's a sign that Trump is sending to Moscow, or at least the Western allies are sending to Moscow, that the Americans are prepared to get more aggressive with them, I think.
Yeah, I was talking to Heather Conley just over an hour ago. She is a former part of George W. Bush's administration, and she quite forcefully made the point that one lever that is President Trump's to pull is by tightening the screw, if you excuse me mixing metaphors, on Putin with sanctions. And he simply has avoided any mention of this in recent days. Where do you think we might go from here with that?
Well, what's interesting, bear in mind that there's quite a lot of sanctions put on under Biden, and Trump hasn't taken any of them off. So that's not nothing. But he does have further he can go, especially on banking. The biggest Russian bank hasn't been sanctioned by the US, for example. Neither has Gazprom Bank, the one that takes all the money in for all the oil that's being secretly shipped around the world to people like China and India. Having said, along with that, there's this whole shadow shipping system that's going on. The tankers are allowed to creep around the world under foreign flags, and the foreign flag nations are not penalized. So there's a whole range of secondary sanctions of people who buy Russian energy and who ship it that could be used. Now, this would be a really aggressive move because it would hit much more directly at the heart of the Russian economy, which is in a fairly precarious position, but has managed to scrape by during the whole conflict. And so if we saw something like that, we would start hearing from Moscow that Trump is taking sides, I think, and they're all bets for any US peace negotiation would be off. That would be a sign that Trump has abandoned any effort at getting at becoming the peacemaker, getting the Nobel Peace Prize that he covets for peace in Ukraine.
Interesting, David. Let's move on to our second topic. It's another Trump perennial. He's delayed imposing 50% tariffs on the EU after having a positive call with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, or on von der Leyen, as some people call her. Here he is speaking yesterday on that decision.
We had a very nice call, and I agreed to move it. I believe June 9th would be, July 9th would be the date. That was the date she requested. Could we move it from June 1st to July 9th? And I agreed to do that, and that she said we will rapidly get together and see if we can work something out.
So that's Trump on the 50% tariffs, which look like they are not going to happen. Now, this is all part of what he's been doing recently, isn't it, David? He promises these huge figures, eye-watering figures that crash the stock market, and then slowly starts to walk them back.
Yeah, he's utilizing one of the great measures that he's got at his disposal, which is the power of the American economy, to make people jump up and try and offer him concessions. So it's complicated, but there are still a bunch of sanctions on. But it as you say, it raised alarm bells and tanked the markets in Europe when he said, "I'm fed up with the talks; they're going nowhere. We're going to put 50% tariffs on everything from the EU from June the 1st, which is coming Sunday." And that was sort of jump starting what he said were going to be the reciprocal tariffs coming in on July the 9th. Well, now they've gone back to July the 9th, which is when his 90-day pause for everybody else on reciprocal tariffs comes to an end. And I think, you know what, you can tell when you listen to Trump that he respects von der Leyen. He's had some good negotiations and chats with her. She's obviously said something encouraging on this phone call quite smartly. The Europeans waited a few days, and this is a tactic that's been observed to apply actually a little bit of domestic pressure to allow the domestic pressure to build, because of course when Trump announces this rash and very high tariff, the domestic markets are also reacting, and domestic producers are on it. They're all clamoring to call the White House and call his staff and say, this is crazy, it'll cause economic turmoil in America. So the Europeans just let that stew for a few days, and then von der Leyen called up. And so the climate was right for Trump to look for a bit of an exit ramp from this immediate massive tariff hike. He has announced, of course, 20% tariffs across the board on the EU, and those are the ones that they were already trying to negotiate away. So there's the threat of tariffs are there, but as we saw with China, Trump wanted an exit from the massive tariffs that both sides had escalated on each other. It's hard to see where it's exactly going to end up, because the 10% tariffs across the board are still in play, so they're still on. And we occasionally hear people like the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick saying, we took in $5 billion this week, or we took in $8 billion, or I can't remember the exact number that they took in on tariff payments at the border. But it's beginning to dawn on Trump's supporters that a lot of this tariff money is being paid in pretty directly by them, because prices are going up. And,
I think that is
a lot of shops. Yeah, a lot of big chains in America are announcing
and the
price
consumers
rises.
are starting to
Trump
hurt.
is furious about this.
Indeed, as are the investors as well, the small-time investors in the States whose pips are squeaking as well. David Charter from the Times, thank you very much for completing this week's Trump Dump. You are listening to Times Radio.